Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to my channel. I am back to post another video, and I had to post it today because it's July the 8th and it's the anniversary of something, so it seemed fitting to post a video today. Before I get started, I want to say thank you to all my new subscribers, for you guys who keep tuning in to listen to me talk or ramble or whatever weirdness and interesting stuff that I want to talk about. So yes, so, for those of you who, some of you probably already know what the anniversary is, but for those of you who don't know what the anniversary is, it's 75 years ago from today that the Roswell crash happened, or incident happened, or some people want to refer, because some people still don't believe a crash happened. Um, there are those who believe that, I think there are some people who still probably believe it, maybe it was a weather balloon, I don't know, or Project Mogul, I don't know. But I certainly don't believe that. But yeah, 75 years ago, this came out in the Roswell Daily Record. Roswell Army Air Force captured a flying saucer on a rancher's ranch in New Mexico. And that rancher was Mac Brazel, who found the debris on his farm. So I guess the crash must have happened, I want to say around July the 3rd or July the 4th, I believe. Because I remember there was a big storm, from what the witnesses said, that rolled in. I know there was a husband and wife who particularly remember there being a really big storm that came in. There was lots of lightning, and they were sitting out on their patio, on their porch. And I think they were Mac Brazel's neighbors, but I can't remember their name. But they lived far apart, but they were still his neighbors, like miles up the road. And I remember hearing this, I think they remember either hearing this really bad, a loud clap of thunder, sound like it's a lightning strike something. I don't know if they remember them saying they saw the ship, but they do remember hearing this lightning sound like it hit something. And I believe the next day, Mac Brazel went to go check on his animals that were out there, and he saw this debris just everywhere out there. I'm pretty sure some of you guys already know the story. And it was like nothing he'd ever seen. It was spread for over miles. So he ended up contacting, and I'm not going to go into detail because it's a long story, but I know he ended up contacting the sheriff. He called him and they told him to bring it in, and he brought it in, and they looked at it, and they told him to contact the Air Force, the Army Air Force at the time, because the Army and Air Force was combined. And so they came out, Jesse Marcel, I believe, came out, and somebody else came out with him. I can't remember the other person. They looked at it or whatever. And then from there, that's when the lie just started. Well, I want to say the lie didn't really start from there. The lie started 24 hours after that headline came out, which was released by a press officer at the Army Air Force Base who released it. So yeah. Then within 24 hours, the Army Air Force retracted their story and said it was just a weather balloon, that there was nothing to see there. People would just go back to sleep. The Army Air Force didn't capture a flying saucer. It was just a lovely weather balloon. And then they had the nerve to have Jesse Marcel pose with that debris 24 hours later. So yeah. And then that's when the lie started, and it continued to start, and it continues to this day. So it's 75 years, and we still haven't gotten any truth from them, and we're probably not going to, because once you start a lie like that from something that big, how are you going to come out and tell the truth? Now you're just going to have to keep going at it to the lie. So yeah, what's interesting though with the release that came out in the the Roswell Daily Record was that the crash happened around July the 3rd or the 4th, I believe. But the article didn't come out into the paper till July the 8th. So I would think within that time frame they would have known if they wanted to release that to the public collectively. I'm assuming the press officer who came out and made that statement and had it put in the paper, he must have taken it upon himself to just do that. I mean, because maybe they just didn't know what to do at the time. He just jumped the gun and like, I'm just gonna go release this. The Army Air Force captured a flying saucer. The world needs to know. But obviously that was a bad mistake on his end, and really realized the screw up. So afterwards, they retracted the story 24 hours later and said there was nothing. But I mean, when you think about it, though, if it was a weather balloon, why do you need all that military to come out there to clean up a weather balloon? Why keep Mac Brazel detained for a week? Then he comes back out and he changed his story because I believe he had told people what he had saw. I believe he had told his neighbors or something. And assuming they threatened him, they helped him detained for a week. So, I mean, over a weather balloon, are you kidding me? But back then, people with more trusted the government more, the military more, that they believed whatever they told them. So if they told me it was a weather balloon, of course they were going to believe it was a weather balloon. It wouldn't have been until the late Stanton Freeman got arrested. So I think that may have been like probably like 20 years later. I can't even remember, but it was years apart. And he ended up finding Jesse Marcel in New Orleans, and they had a conversation. Jesse Marcel ended up telling him that what he posed with was not what was at that crash site. He told him it was a crash that craft, a craft that crashed, and they had him come out and pose with that. And it wouldn't just be his testimony that made everything change. I mean, it started from there. Thank God Stanton Freeman found him and questioned him, and it came out. I mean, even though we still haven't gotten any truth on the matter, we're probably never going to. I mean, you started live from 1947, and you keep going up to this point. There's no way they're going to come out and admit to anything now. It's the lies just gotten too big, so they just kind of keep it going. But I do wonder, though. Oh my God, I lost my train of thought. Oh, okay, I know what I was going to say. The mortician that worked at the Roswell funeral home. I'm sure you guys probably know the story. Glenn Dennis. He, I guess it was like the only funeral home in the area. So when the military got hurt or whatever, I guess they did double duty, like almost kind of like a hospital, or they help with like people who got hurt in the military. And the morticians and stuff would go out and bandage them up. Like the military who got into the Army Air Force who got into a crash or whatever out there in the area, the people from the funeral home would go out and help out and take the injured guys back to the military base. Well, Glenn Dennis on that day, I guess, had got a call from the Army Air Force, and they would ask him all kinds of questions about, do you have like 3 foot, 4 foot caskets, and so on and so on. I mean, you can find his story on YouTube. I think it's listed on the National Archives. So I'm not going to go into details about it, but he did go out to the base that day because one of the soldiers had got injured, and he had to come out and pick him up wherever he was and bandage him up and then drive him back to the Air Force. And he said when he got there was like military everywhere and MPs everywhere. He had never seen that chaotic. And he knew a friend of his who worked there. She was a nurse, and he ran into her there, and she was like, "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be doing here. You need to get out of here. You're gonna get in trouble." And she was like, "I'll call you later." And then right when he was like, I think he asked about the crash. He asked one of the soldiers about the crash. And then they called their sergeant over, which was a redhead gentleman. And the guy was like, "I hear you're inquiring about the crash." And he like, and they, I think they ended up threatening him and were like, "You didn't see anything. You need to get out of here or whatever." What's interesting though, what makes me believe his story, if you guys go on and watch him on National Archives, I mean, I think he's passed away now. This was 1947, and the military was pretty much still segregated at that time. But what interesting that Glenn Dennis said, and what really sticks out, like you know how people say the devil is in the details. So when he was in the Army Air Force being questioned about why he was inquiring about a crash and he didn't see anything, he said a red-headed sergeant came over to him. I guess one of the other MPs called the sergeant over and was asking him about why he was inquiring about it. And then Glenn Dennis fired back and said, well, I'm not in the military, or something to that effect, that I don't take orders for you. And the redheaded guy was like, sergeant was like, well, this desert is big or something, and you can end up, people gonna end up picking your bones out of the sand or whatever. But what was very interesting about that is Glenn Dennis said that a black sergeant was standing next to the red-headed sergeant, was saying, but yeah, sergeant, he will make better dog food for our dogs, which I found that really interesting, because for him to say that, because it was rare to see a black person serving in the military with a white person back in 1947. I mean, that was really odd for him to, because that's just not something you're going to say or see that would stick out, because like I said, the military was pretty much still segregated at that time. I mean, that fact right there really makes me believe his story, that he was at that base, and he did have a friend who worked there. I mean, like I say, watch his story on National Archives. You can search it, Glenn Dennis. It's out there. I mean, it's a long story. He goes to details about the nurse who worked there and how she had never seen anything before, and they brought these bodies in, and she described them as, I think, 3 fingers or maybe 4. They didn't have thumbs, and very long fingers, and these beings had like these suction cups things at the tip of their fingers, and they had the big heads, the typical graves or whatever. And the nurse was so sick to the stomach because she said the smell was just so awful, and she had never seen anything so awful or smelled so bad. She had to leave the room and throw up, and the doctors had to leave the room and throw up. And so yeah, but like I said, I say check this story out. I mean, he seems credible, and just that fact about him mentoring, because that really stood out to me when he said there was a black soldier standing next to the red-headed soldier, and I mean, cause like I said, I don't think it wasn't until like 1949, I believe, that Truman, where is it? Truman signed the Executive Order 9989 banning segregation. So yeah, the military wasn't truly desegregated until 19. I think it was what was the date again? I believe 1949, July 26, 1949. So yeah, that oddity really stood out to me for those of you. But like I said, you guys can do your own research. But yeah, 75 years since that crash, that headline came in across the newspapers and flashed across the world that Roswell Army Air Force captured a flying disc. Can you imagine what that must have been like during that time? It had been like crazy. I mean, you have this saucer out there in the middle of nowhere that got struck by lightning, taken down. Obviously things aren't invincible. I mean, can you imagine if that happened today though? I don't think people would be out there with their cameras. The military wouldn't be able to quickly to shut people up and shut people down like they did back then. That we just wouldn't tolerate that today. But yeah, it had to be insane. I bet a lot of people were just freaking out. But I bet it was insane but exciting at the time. At least for me it would have been. But anyway, I do wonder where those bodies, they say they took them to Wright-Patterson Air Force. So, and I wonder if they still there. I can imagine they're still there. There was a rumor though that 2 of the beings, because some people say there was 3 beings, some people say there was 4, but I believe there was only 3. 2 of the beings died on impact, and I think they were ejected from the crash. 1 being was still alive, they said. And I think they may have taken back to Wright-Patterson. And I wonder if it was still alive, how long did it live? I hope they didn't torture it to death, because that would be really awful to think about. Can you imagine? And it doesn't seem like the other, it would seem like this craft, you have to think this was a smaller craft. Did it come from a mothership? I mean, were they just left on their own? They just crashed? No one ever came looking for them, I guess? I don't know. But I do know that what crashed in that desert in 1947 of July was not a weather balloon. It was not test dummies. I mean, you guys can do your research, and you can see the cracks in their stories. And I don't know. There's just too much um, information out there. Too much credible information out there for people to still believe today that it was a weather balloon that crashed back there. I just don't buy it. I don't know. Oh, I wish I could just step back in time and just witness what happened. I don't want to see for myself. Surprisingly, I haven't gone out to Roswell, New Mexico. I know they have a festival every year, and I know they was really celebrating it this year because it was 75 years. I should go out there. I've driven out to Area 51 to the back gate and other places. I definitely need to take a trip out there. It's not like I'm gonna find the debris. The military pretty much came up there and just cleaned that area. But I would still like to go out there, stick my hands on the ground where this thing crashed. Can you imagine? Just envisioning that, what it must have been like. Those soldiers must have been out there digging or picking up pieces all day, all night, every little scrap of piece off the ground just to keep us from knowing about it. Can you imagine technology they've developed from that craft just to be, I, just to be in on it, just to, I don't know, it's just crazy to think about and amazing to think about. So yeah, 75 years since the Roswell crash. 75 years of that, our Army Air Force has kept, well, not Army Air Force anymore because they separated, but our military has kept that ridiculous lie going, and they just keep trying to feed us that it was Project Mogul, which it wasn't. What else did I want to add in there? I am curious though. It's sad no one ever was able to find that nurse that Glenn Dennis talked about. Supposedly, like the after he had met her at that diner and she had explained to him what had happened, what she saw in those beings or whatever, that I guess like the next day he tried to reach out to her, and he contacted the base, and they had said she had been shipped overseas, which was really really strange. Um, I mean, I mean, I guess what she saw maybe just really hit her really hard or whatever, and they just got rid of her and shipped her overseas. But I know he said he tried writing to her, and he got a letter returned in the mail that said deceased or something. Maybe like a year later, supposedly she was killed on a training mission over in London or whatever. So I don't know. That's really could be really weird or whatever. But yeah, no one ever could find her. So I don't know. Was she truly killed in a training accident, or did someone in our military government actually do something to her to keep her quiet? So who knows? I don't know. But like I said, yeah. Oh, what else? Oh, there was something in this article on the paper I wanted to read to you. It says, no, right below where the headline says Army Air Force captured flying saucer on ranch in Roswell, right below that it says no details of flying this are revealed, but I couldn't read below what was there. It's interesting. I need to see if I can find an actual copy of the paper and maybe order it or whatever, because I'm pretty sure somebody out there sells the copies of them. And then you see this paper again where it says this craze continues. Army this out New Mexico find as weather gear. Weather gear. And they got poor Jesse Marcel holding that debris. That was not what's found at the crash site. That's just awful. They just made him look stupid. You have this guy who served in the military for decades. He knows all kinds of weapon systems and what they were flying around back then. And he mean to tell me he couldn't identify a weather balloon from an alien crash that had never been seen before. And they fed that to the public? I don't know. I mean, but like I said, people back there believed it. They ate up whatever the government and military told them. So, I don't know. So at least he came out in the end before he passed away. I shared his story with Stanton Freeman, and Stanton Freeman got his story out there. I'm so sad Stanton Freeman passed away. I met him at a couple of years ago at the UFO International Congress they had in Scottsdale. He's such a nice man. Yeah, but and he did a lot of good work in this in the UFO phenomenon field. So yeah, he definitely deserves some credit. And so does Jesse Marcel. Oh, there was another witness too, because I was watching a documentary on the Roswell case, and I can't remember her name, but it was an older lady who I guess her dad was worked for the fire department, but at the time I think she was a teenager, because I guess the fire department had showed up on scene or whatever and had witnessed what happened, and the military showed up at her house and had I guess threatened her because I guess her dad had shared with her what he had saw whatever, and they came to her house and told her you didn't hear what your or you don't recall what your dad told you, you don't remember, you didn't hear anything, whatever. You know how they do, whatever. And she like, um I I don't know. Oh my god, how did the story go? I can't remember if her dad brought like a piece of debris home and showed it to her, or he just told her. But anyway, they threatened her not to say anything, and she kept saying, well, she did know the story that he did tell her. I'm pretty sure I'm probably getting this all wrong, but you can watch it. And then they threatened her, talking about taking her family out to the desert, and they'll never find the bodies or whatever. The desert's a big place, and no one would ever find you. And when she was telling that story, that documentary, she just had tears in her eyes. It was so awful. I even had tears in my eyes to listen to her tell that story. I just cannot think of her name. But I'm pretty sure some of you guys know it already. Yeah, but she was can you imagine you come in and you threaten like a teenage child with death and her family, and talking about tossing their bodies out in the desert where no one would ever find you, to keep a secret that the world should know about, that we should know about life out there that came here, that crashed here. I mean, you threaten your own citizens to keep something secret that's alien. How does that make any sense? I don't know. I could understand it was during the Cold War, World War II, or whatever, and the bombs had been dropped, and everything that was going on, and they wanted to keep stuff from Russia and Germany and everything, but still, that might have turned I don't know. That might have stopped everything. That could have made everything better or take pause. Who knows? I don't know. They always like to weaponize stuff, and you know that's probably what they did with that technology. They probably have weaponized it. Most of it anyway, if they were able to reverse engineer, which I think they probably did. Because if you read the book, The Day After Roswell, although everything in this book probably is not completely accurate from what I was told, but Colonel Corso talks about how microchips and night vision goggles and bulletproof, I think it was Teflon that the police wear or whatever. Oh, what else? What else? Night vision, microchips. Oh, there's something else. Was all possibly reversed engineered from the alien tech, from the crash in Roswell in 1947. But then, no, there's been other crashes, so that happened a couple of years after that. You had the Aztec crash, and then there was supposed to be, I think, one in Kingman, Arizona. But then you had the one that happened 2 years before Roswell, the Trinity crash. If you guys haven't read Jacques Vallée and Paula Harris' book, you definitely need to read this. So that tells us that this was another crash 2 years before Roswell in 1945. And the two main eyewitnesses who found the crash were kids at the time. I think they were like 9 and 7. I think one of the kids' name was Remy. I think the other one's name was Jose or whatever. But it's really, really compelling book. You guys need to check it out if you haven't. But if I incorrect on some stuff, please let me know in the comments down below. So yeah, I think that's it. I just wanted to come on. Roswell is one of my favorite cases because I guess that's That was the first truly documented case that was came out in the newspaper. Even though it was retracted, that first story that came out, I have no doubt that was true. I believe wholeheartedly that was true. And they captured a crash. They sent the debris off to maybe Area 51. They sent the bodies off to Wright Patterson. Whether they're still in those locations or not, who knows? But yeah, very interesting. One other thing I want you guys to turn you on to, I was watching Spaced Out Radio, I think day before yesterday. You know, I love Spaced Out Radio with Dave. He had a guest on, Roderick from Why the Big Secret. So very cool. It was a really, really good show they did. He was a really, really good guest. I suggest you guys go to YouTube and check out his channel. It's called Why the Big Secret. And he talks about UFOs and paranormal phenomena. He has a really, really, really good channel. I'm so glad that I watched Dave the other day to get turned to him. He's also a MUFON investigator. And he has a couple of documentaries out. I think a couple of them you can check out on Tubi, and he has another one coming out soon. So yeah, go on and subscribe to his channel. Give him a thumbs up. I'm pretty sure you. Actually, I'm not pretty sure. I know you guys will love his content he has on there because I absolutely loved it. I watched some today, and I'm gonna watch some tomorrow. So yeah, he's a really, really cool and down to earth guy. So yeah, and so is Dave. They're both really cool. Maybe we'll get to meet in person one day. If we have another conference. So yeah, I think that's it. That's all I got for right now. So yeah, I'm out. So have a lovely night. Live long and prosper, as Spock would say, and as historian Richard Dolan would say, don't let the bastards get you down. Bye for now.